Wasting time. Oh, oh. For my whole life, we never crossed the line. Only friends in my mind. But now I realize it was always you. Can't believe I knew. Now I see it all this time.
For those of us who know the On series, and I've said this a couple of times already, we usually do these very big affairs in legal offices like Sherman Sterling and Wilmer Hale and places like that. We thought, in speaking with Tatiana, one of our panelists today, that it's very appropriate to have this particular event in this particular location. It is the first, and I'll let the owner talk more about that, but it's the first recording studio in the world to accept Bitcoin. And he'll talk about that and the history of this space in a second. So without further ado, Sandy, why don't you just come on up?
Oh, great.
And here's the owner of Premier Studios, Sandy Schneiderman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Hey, welcome everybody. First of all, it's my honor to have you guys at the studio. It's a legendary studio. It's been in business, well, probably 20, 25 years. And some of the people who've recorded here are Mariah Carey, Busta Rhymes, Coldplay, Rihanna, Beyonce, 50 Cent. That's just 5 or 6 out of 100. We have 3 panelists and 1 moderator, and I've looked at the backgrounds of the panelists, and they are pretty dope. They are qualified. And it's a pleasure to deal with people who have the background and who are intelligent and can talk to you guys intelligently about what digital currency is all about. Tatiana Moroz. Tatiana is one of the panelists. She's worked for me for I don't know how many years. I lost count, Tatiana, but she introduced me to Bitcoin as a currency, and that would be a good idea if we accepted Bitcoin as payment for our services here. And I did quite a bit of research, and for this studio, we are receiving money, and we're going to receive money in US dollars because we have a converter called BitPay, that Tatiana introduced me to, and BitPay is the one who is going to convert Bitcoin into US dollars and deposit it into our account. So that makes me feel very good. When you deal with credit card companies like Amex and Visa and whatever, they charge you 3%, 2%, whatever. And we deal with a company called Global Payments, who does the processing, and they charge us that money, and then we have to charge the client the money. And the thing I like about BitPay is there is no charge. So it's nice, I think, for the label or the artist or whoever who uses credit cards, that they don't have to pay like a markup on the 3% or 2%. So I think that's a great thing. And I also think Bitcoin is, it's like, I don't know who I was speaking to, it's like having your own wallet, your own bank. It's like almost having your own bank and your wallet of coins. Not coins, but the value of it. And it's very, that's important to a lot of people. You're at the beginning of something that I think is going to be a game changer. Really.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you for coming, you all.
Thanks, Sandy. We appreciate that a lot.
Okay.
And you know it's the music industry when the guy puts on his reading glasses and says it's dope. And that was a huge plug for BitPay. Tony Gallopy, you owe me $7,500. I want it in Bitcoin. Okay, so let me introduce the panel, and they'll say something about themselves. You've seen the literature, you've seen the website, you understand. You have Tatiana Moroz. Tatiana is the inventor, along with some other people, of Tatiana coin, which is the first artist coin on Earth, actually, when you first brought it out. Next to her, we have Greg Simon. Greg is a co-founder and CFO, in this case, Chief Frog Officer. He'll explain that later. For Ribbit.me, which is the world's first cashback coin. He'll explain what that means. It's for promotions, basically. Then we have Phil Quartararo, a business partner of mine, an icon in the music industry, former CEO of Warner and Virgin Records and EMI Marketing, who brings a wealth of information, and we'll talk about why Phil is important and what he did to actually create the atmosphere, to lay the groundwork for where things are now and where they'll go. So what we have is the very, very recent past, which that led up to this. We have the very, very present, and we have the future. And how they all tie in together is an important way to understand what digital currencies mean in this space right now. So I'll let them start. Tatiana, introduce yourself, please.
My name's Tatiana Moroz. I'm the creator of the first ever artist cryptocurrency, Tatiana Coin. I'm also the sales director at Bitcoin Magazine, and I used to work here at Premier Studios. I'm the one that convinced Sandy to take Bitcoin through BitPay, and I'm really over the moon. I think that music is an amazing tool for reaching people, for touching them, and I think that what lacks in Bitcoin and the explanation of Bitcoin sometimes is passion. And I think that what you're going to see here today is just how Bitcoin can change the art world, the music world, and beyond. So I'm looking forward to exploring this with everyone here.
Fantastic.
My name is Greg Simon. I'm a co-founder and chief financial frog.
Chief Financial Frog, is
right.
that what it is?
That's right, of Ribbit.me. And my background is in banking, and I share the sentiment to banks, which is why I no longer work at banks. I've been a advocate and a holder of Bitcoin since the beginning of last year. I think it's such an exciting technology, not just for currency, but far beyond currency. But I think what's really exciting is the underlying technology. Bitcoin blockchain is very exciting, but there's so many things that we can do with it. And it's an honor to be here with this panel of such amazing people. I really don't feel like I belong. But what we're trying to do with this technology is use it in a way that incentivizes reward programs, and it brings the artist or the label closer together with the consumer in a very efficient and transparent way at a very low cost. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why it's so exciting to be with these people here today and talk about these solutions.
My name is Phil Quartararo, and I've spent the last 30 years working in and running music companies. And I ran Warner Brothers in America. I was their president for 6 years. I was one of the founding members of Virgin in America when Richard Branson wanted to push into America, and was a CEO there for 10 years, and ran EMI. I was the president of EMI marketing arm for North America for many years, 6 years also. And even though I was executive running those businesses for years, my passion has always been branding and packaging. It's always about finding the shortest distance between an artist and their music and the consumer. And once you start to figure out the shortest distance, the next piece of the puzzle is to figure out where you can find more consumers. And that's where I started to learn about alternative currencies, because I found out quickly that of the 6 billion people in the world, only about 2 billion transact with credit cards and ATM machines and banks. The other 4 billion are sitting out the party, and I know that if you can turn those 4 billion on, you got a lot to talk about. So a lot when I learned about going into India, where there's 1.5 billion people, only about 10% of them are really active consumers. So I always asked, how do we get the other 90% turned on? And when we faced piracy in our industry, the statistic I always heard was 90% of the people are stealing music, 10% are the only people buying it. I said, okay, then how do we talk to the 90%? So when I heard that there were only 30% of the world was buying music in the conventional currencies, I said, that's great. How do we get to the other 70%? I'm the guy that's always looking at the backward puzzle, So that's how I got attracted to try and figure out this puzzle.
Well, so let's start with that, Phil, because many, and I'll say many meaning me right now, think that your concept of music as currency did lay the groundwork for this conversation today. I don't think we could have this conversation if you hadn't have done some of the things that you did pre-digital currencies. Can you talk about that a little bit?
in the early days of trying to associate a brand with an artist, the artists were always afraid to get aligned with a brand because their concept of a brand alignment was what they saw on TV when they saw the K-Tel commercial, and you had to call the 800 number. So it was very difficult in the 80s and 90s to convince an artist there was anything cool about dialing an 800 number to get their music, because of course they were all artists and they were creating art, and art is the furthest thing 180 degrees away from that crass 800 number on your television screen saying, you know, everything you can eat for the smallest thing you've ever paid. That was the contradiction, and that was the rub, of course, for years. Then the idea of bringing the brand to the table really was the biggest piece of being able to put the alternative currency topic on the table, because once they could accept that there was someone at the table besides them and the consumer and the industry that connected the two, you know, that the pipe was the industry, was the record industry, and that's what connected the musician and the artist, and the artist and the consumer, excuse me. When that pipe imploded 20 years ago, or began to implode 20 years ago, they had to embrace what I had been trying to sell them for years, which was the brand could become the pipe. If you learn how to use it the right way, you can make that the shortest distance between your music and your fans.
Right.
So they had to make that, they had to come across that bridge, and they didn't want to come across that bridge. Then of course the bridge they were on collapsed, and you know, we got two choices. We need another bridge, or we're all about to get wet. So begrudgingly they accepted we have to get in the brand business. That's the only way we're going to be able to talk to our consumers. Being able to get them into the brand business was the thing that opened this up, because once you're in the brand business, it's only about how big can you scale it. So, you know, if you're a small local soft drink, you dream about becoming Coke. If you're a small Korean car manufacturer, you dream about becoming Ferrari. If you're a small artist, you dream about becoming the Rolling Stones, or whatever you fill in the blank. So it was only about how, so once we had them emotionally across that bridge, the next piece of the puzzle was, well, how big can we make it? And the ceiling of the finite world of music consumers was now faced with a double drama, because piracy was shrinking how big it could be. So we had to redefine it. And that's what brought us to this. The one of the very first bands, a band that I signed to Warner Brothers, was Linkin Park, a big rock band now, pop band. We signed them in 1999, but as early as in their first album, they were talking about they wanted to be the band then that would reach the most people ever on Earth. And it didn't have to be that they had to become a fan of their music. It was that they wanted to be able to have their impression, at least, whether it was out of curiosity or as a fan or whatever it was, they wanted to be able to attract more. And their claim 5 years later was that they had attracted over 1 billion impressions, and they were the first band that made that claim. I don't know how you really can substantiate that, but by the time we got to 2010, that was their claim, that they had in fact been through 1 billion people. Okay. The fact of the matter is, they were thinking along the same lines as this, and that was the first band I was able to approach and say, there's another way to do this. The days of somebody getting in the car, driving the car to Tower Records, taking the little green stuff out of your pocket and putting it on the table, walking out with a disc, that's done. There's no more Tower Records. There's no more disc. There's almost no more green paper. So we got to figure out another way to skin this cat. Otherwise, you guys are making music for free,
Right.
and that's not working for anybody.
And that, I think, comes back to the brand proposition and the way that the idea of a brand has morphed from the traditional aspect of Coca-Cola or whomever into the band being the brand itself. And if you think of the band as the brand, which Linkin Park under Phil sort of introduced to the industry, then you get to sort of where Greg is. And you say, okay, well, we're a brand. How can we create brand equity? How can we sustain value over time and scale? And that's where digital currencies become, and we'll talk, Tatiana will go over just almost the opposite after that, but if you take Phil's thread right now, talk a little bit about to the audience how you can scale that relationship, how you can take that brand transference and then blow it up.
Totally. Right. So when Phil talks about this pipe that's you need between the brand and the consumer, and it just screams Bitcoin to me. Well, I heard a presentation he did, I think a few years ago. We talked about that, and this was forcing the Bitcoin technology. Bitcoin and the underlying technology is simply a tool for us to communicate peer-to-peer in a very easy and safe way and transferring value. And what we can do with that is we can make the coin the brand. And what we're doing with our company, Ribbit.me, is we have a rewards program that we offer to merchants and to brands. And they can white label our coin to whatever their brand would be. And they can offer that to their consumers as whatever they want it to be. It can be simply a reward for purchasing something. It can be attached to a ticket for a concert. It can be attached to a song. It can be the music. And by offering that, it creates a very efficient direct link to the consumer. And it's a strong link, and the consumer now feels a stronger connection to that artist. It's very powerful because it costs nothing for the artist to offer it. It's decentralized, so we don't have to trust the people who make it. And when you're using our coin, because the underlying reward is universally accepted anywhere around the world, it's not just that rewards program. You can take it and you can use it as currency as well as a reward. So it becomes a very powerful tool for the artist to connect to that consumer and offer something of value and maintain that connection. And the brand then becomes embedded within that reward.
So Tatiana, you come from a different brand perspective. You are the brand, and you are creating this on your own with Tatiana Coin. So how does that work for everybody?
Well, you know, I was really excited to be the first artist coin because I like to be innovative, and it's been a big experiment. I saw a lot of problems. You know, I went to music school and I worked in all these really great studios, and I saw so many problems. First of all, I hated the music that was out in the 2000s. I thought it was really terrible. And I also saw that there were all these artists getting put into the studio that I thought didn't really deserve the opportunity. And so what was the problem? That the artist doesn't have, the good artists weren't getting the right funding, and the labels had an issue because they had this pressure to make a huge hit, whereas before, you know, they could spend some time on artist development. The game had sort of changed. You know, there was a whole different set of pressures on them as well. And, you know, there's some internal problems within the music industry, a lot of greed, and I don't know, it was a bit of a mess. But
Just the music industry?
yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's worse when it's the music industry because it's your heart that you're putting out there, right? This is your soul. That's the one place where there shouldn't be corruption, and yet there was. So what I liked about Tatiana Coin was it took the Indiegogo model, which had kind of helped with that, right? Because now if you were an indie artist, what do you need? Money, right?
You mean crowdfunding?
Right. Well, no. Well, yeah, Indiegogo or Kickstarter or whatever, anything like that was...
Just for those who may not.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, they have their limitations, right? Because you got your, you paid your $20 and you got your T-shirt, and then you forget about the artist, and that's basically the end of the relationship. What I love about Tatiana Coin is that now I have people who have a vested interest to see how I do. They're with me for the life of my career, unless, of course, they sell the Tatiana Coin, which assuming they won't do that. But, I mean, and if they do sell the Tatiana Coin, then they get something back for it. They have a flexibility with the prizes, but more importantly, they have a reason to check in with me all the time. And they are responsible, directly responsible for my success, and I reward them with giving them backstage passes or, you know, special performances or, you know, when I have a track and I don't know what I want to name it or if I want to go with this version or the other version. The possibilities are endless. I can really interact with people on a long-term basis. And I think that that's just the beginning, which I don't know if we want to go further into the label concept, but, you know, I think that this is just the beginning.
Yeah, it is just the beginning. I mean, what Tatiana's really hinting at are things, she can become her own stock market at that point if she really wants to, and this is a reality. She can execute her own buy-sell orders based on her appearances, and change scalping, change everything. So that being said, let me interject here for a second. Who knows about Apple's strategy recently. Have you heard the news about Apple? So Apple, I was speaking with Major League Baseball about these concepts last year. And they glazed over. They didn't know what Bitcoin was. They didn't know what any currencies were. And we got to, after a number of meetings, we got to understand them. They got to understand us. We found out that Apple had been secretly outfitting every major sports stadium in the country with iBeacon. Now, iBeacon is a near-field communication device you stick on the wall, and it reads where your phone is in relation to where the payment is and where the merchandise is, right? So they kind of track you. That's a simplified version. I mean, Ray's going to take some. It's blue. Is it Bluetooth? Okay, but Apple's actually and they bring in NFC. But that's another headline from 2 days ago.
Low energy Bluetooth.
Right. Okay. Sorry, that's a payments guy there. So he's going to catch me. He's going to make me pay if I screw up. But they set up these tracking modules to facilitate transactions, right? And just recently, with the iPhone 6, they've announced, iPhone 5, they announced their wallet strategy. You see the iPhone wallet on deck there on the face. And now they have the next iteration of this, the next step that's logical, is a currency. And it makes sense in Apple's world. They just recently also made a statement that they're going to accept other currencies in the App Store so that you can actually, they want the competition because they can own the competition by definition of their leverage with iTunes, their leverage with people's credit cards and access to capital to fund and add fungibility to their own currency. So you see this happening all around, not just the music industry, but in payments. It's all really about engagement, though. It's all about getting you and your device and your heart and your soul poured into the value of that particular currency. So that being said, I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to just refer to this note here for a minute because it's important. My phone just died.
Gotta go on the fly. Go on the fly.
I have a few comments about that, Rick. Actually, I think that.
Yeah.
They're controlling us as we speak.
I wrote a bad article about jobs in CNN International 3 years ago. No, I'm serious. This ghost has haunted me ever since.
Yeah, I think that the Apple announcement is very exciting. It legitimizes what we're doing here. They obviously see the value proposition in digital currencies and offering multiple currencies and having their wallet. I think that it's not anything to be concerned about. It's something we should be excited about.
It does validate.
Right, it validates it. And for example, at our company, we actually don't think Apple is a competitor to us because even if they were to offer their own coin or rewards program, we don't like to use the word coin, we're trying to transition beyond the thought of it as a currency, you can only use it on an Apple product. And a lot of us think that Apple products are very widely used, but if you look at the global population, it's a very small percentage. So the total market they can capture worldwide is tiny. Additionally, they want to have multiple currencies in their product. And so if you have a branded coin, for example, say if Apple allows you to white label a coin with Linkin Park or something like that, that again is only you can only transaction within an Apple platform. If Linkin Park wants to reach all of their fans, they need to use a rewards token, a coin that is white labeled on top of something that is agnostic to the platform. And Apple just cannot provide that. And so, one, they're not competition, and two, I think we're us. And two, it legitimizes the technology, and it's a huge catalyst forward.
And I think that was the point that we had talked about
Right.
just before this, is that there's legitimizing forces all around us now that are creating this ecosystem that make all this possible. If Apple decided not to ever get into currencies, it would be a lot harder, actually, to make the
But
case.
if it's not Apple, it'll be somebody else.
No, right.
It'll be
Right.
Procter and Gamble.
And it should
It'll be Toyota. It's going to be somebody
Yeah.
major, but the net result's going to be the same because it's going to bring enough water in that all the boats are going to rise.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be what we need. It needs to happen.
Yeah. And so speaking of that, now from an artist perspective, you touched on this earlier. There's a relationship between the artist and the label that you mentioned had been fraught with difficulty, let's say. Okay. How does Tatiana, or how, more specifically, Tatiana Coin address that issue? And Phil, you might want to add some corollaries in from what you know about the traditional relationships as well.
Well, I can speak to a few things on that. As an indie artist, I've remained independent this whole time, and it's really, really difficult I went to Berkeley, great music school, blah, 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 but it's very, very difficult to manage having a full-time, unless your parents are rich and giving you some, which unfortunately, I don't know. I'll hit up my parents all the time. They're not giving it up. So, you basically have to have a full-time job, and you also have to have a really good business sense. I happen to be probably better than the average artist at business, but you all of a sudden have to wear all these different hats that you're not always going to be the best at. And then all of a sudden, where's your day? You spend your time trying to put out social media posts, trying to book your shows, trying to make sure that they put your name on the website, that they didn't, that they have the microphones. It's miserable. It's really miserable. And also, how do you break through? I remember when I first got out of school, people were like, oh, you have to find your niche. I'm like, really? On top of all the other things that I have to do, I have to find a niche? I'm a singer-songwriter. Leave me alone. I play a guitar. I write about things. And luckily, I sort of found my way in that, and I managed it. But even now, I find a certain amount of difficulty because, with Tatiana Coin, we created it. I didn't have a marketing team behind it. It was just me and some people that were like, let's try and do this really cool thing. And it was really difficult. And it took us a lot longer than we thought. And we learned a lot of things along the way. But one of the main things that I've learned is that you still need somebody to help you with your career. You cannot be just a one-person island, and because it's just too much.
You can't be your own app?
I guess, Ani DeFranco, right? She came out and she did like a do-it-yourself kind of model, but she was a very exceptional person in that regard. And there's so many other artists that are really great because they don't have good marketing, because they don't have enough money behind them, because they don't have the components that make up a really massive career, they can't break through. And also as a listener, you turn on the radio now, I'm not really particularly impressed. But there's a lot of great music being made now. You don't even need a really big studio anymore. You need it for certain things, but you can do a lot of stuff at home. Great. But who's going to listen to you? I don't have time to sit around listening to some, going through the blogs and listening, oh, the hipsters said this is cool. Now I'm going to listen to this. Who's going to filter that music to me? I don't have time for that. So I think that maybe we need to explore some of those solutions. And I think that that's where you need a team behind you, and whether you call that team a label or a management company or a PR agency or whatever, I think that you need help in order to get the word out there.
Let me ask you a specific question though, Tatiana. How does Tatiana Coin then disrupt or add to, enhance, or change the relationship between artist and label? You may need a team, but do you need a label? If you need a label, what parts of that do you need? And what parts are covered by the actual coin, the currency? What holes does it fill?
Well, when I did Tatiana Coin, I all along have been thinking about how to model it as a label, right? So instead of a record label taking on all of this risk every time they sign an artist, right? They spend all this money. Well, if you can maybe fund, and this is totally experimental, so I don't know everything yet at all, but maybe you fund the label itself with a coin, and then you have the people who put in money into that label who were the coin holders. They vote on which artists they think are the best. And then either you give them, you pay them in the label coin, or at that point, then you create an individual artist coin for those artists. I guess I could take the spoils of Tatiana Coin and hire some of those people, but once again, then you have to deal with managing everybody, making sure that everybody is a cohesive team and that they have your interest at heart. And I don't know if that's so realistic. It's really, you have a finite amount of time in this world. And as an artist, it's a sin that I spend my time messing around with stuff that's really not my wheelhouse, because I have to. And I will continue to do it because I'm tough, but that doesn't make it easy, and that means that there's other artists who didn't have as many advantages as I did that are falling by the wayside and that will never be heard.
So if you were to paint a simple scenario, would you say this would be accurate, that the coin is actually able to provide funding that the label used to provide?
Yes.
You're actually getting it from the crowd. The coin would also be able to pay team members, because you don't have any success without a team of some kind, obviously. And would the coin then create for lack of a better word, we don't like using this word in the industry, but an IPO of sorts to actually float you to your next artistic endeavor? Is that kind of what you have in mind?
I think so. I think that's something that we could try out. I wonder also if some of the technology can take away some of the extra administrative burden off of the team in the first place, right? I don't think that all people who own labels are evil monsters that are just waiting to, feast off of my blood and sell my music for nothing and then go party in, I don't know, Ibiza. But I think that they got into the industry for the same reason. They loved music, or at least most of them did. So I think that there has to be a better way to get all of those people that came together and distribute that money in a more even way and make it more streamlined and make it just something that makes sense to the money guys and makes sense to the art people.
Well, Phil, how realistic do you think that this is, and are the labels actually internally set up to hear this argument? And if not, what do they need?
There's two different parts of this. I respect everything you're saying, of course, from an artist's perspective. I also heard all this stuff for years when I was running the labels, and the fact is the labels take enormous risks and spend enormous money on a lot of artists, and a very, very small percentage get through. So that's the counter conversation, okay? At the end of the day, though, the artist, it's not the debate about, with all due respect, that I don't believe that's the debate. I think what the debate is that the labels are there to serve a purpose, were then and now in a different format. They still serve as a series of filters, because what they do is they try and allow the music that consumers respond to get through. That's it in a nutshell, okay? Because when they spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars signing an artist, making a record, promoting, marketing, merchandising an artist, the consumer is the ultimate jury. And if nobody, there's an old saying we used to have, if something wasn't a hit, Debbie Newman remembers this saying. There's only one reason a record doesn't sell. They don't hear it, they can't find it, they don't like it. Period.
But you actually bring up a really good point, Phil, because the music has been decentralized across the board. Music discovery sites like Guvera, Spotify, etc., Pandora, all of these have created, and there are certain many indie sites that allow you to listen to music you ordinarily would not have found, and they have a lot of social strategies around this. So a digital strategy, digital currency strategy built on this has to be able to ride that social graph to a great degree, and I think that's where the value is in terms of labels having to pay attention to the fact that, hey, you know what, this is completely disruptive. They're going to find artists without me, and those artists are going to propagate on their own.
What I think you're, if I may,
Yeah.
I think what you're saying in a sentence is the consumer's being more empowered.
The consumer is being more empowered.
It's being more empowered because they have more resources to vote. They can vote with their currency.
And
Okay,
with that power, I think comes a taste or a thirst for more power. So you've had heretofore these one-way relationships in all forms of commerce, but let's talk about music right this second. I can foresee a day when labels or artists are going to have to pay for people's attention. They're going to have to spend their own coin that they generate to get eyeballs, and in this case, ears, to listen. And that's okay.
It's already the case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to market, you have to do you have to pay. Now, but currencies change the relationship in that you're actually giving, not only are you giving, say, cash back, in the case of Greg here at Ribbit, but you're also incentivizing that person to create a stronger bond, stronger engagement with the music, with the label, and with the artist, or virtual label at this point. So Greg, can you talk a little bit about the engagement part of this?
Absolutely. I think Tatiana Coin is such a fantastic thing. Congratulations on that. I think many, many more of these brand coins are coming. But I think one of the challenges that we face is if we have a branded coin and its only utility is as that brand, then it sort of takes away from the whole technology aspect of having the currency. It's not really a currency, it's just a Tatiana coin. And so I can't go to Starbucks and buy it. I want to someday, we'd use my Tatiana coin. And so I think what we need to do is evolve to a point where it is a branded coin on top of something that is also having currency utility. And so if I receive a Tatiana coin for buying an album or downloading a song from her site, not only does it have that value as that brand, but it also has value as an underlying currency. So think if you just put slap a label on top of a coin, I can use it to buy stuff from Tatiana. I can also use it anywhere else. Anywhere else that's participating, Walmart, Amazon, you name it. It's universally accepted, and that's tremendously powerful for these brands. Like the new guys coming out, maybe they're not that well known yet, and if they launch a coin, maybe it's not going to be traded or valued that much. It has a floor, it guarantees them that it can have some value, and it can be traded for some other reason. And that's why we need to move beyond the Bitcoin blockchain, because that is not possible using Bitcoin. You have to go to the next level, what we're trying to do.
Well, the next level, it seems to me, and for those of you who don't know a lot about Bitcoin, which is a significant number, good percentage in the audience, there are what we call, like in any currency, there are exchanges. And people right now are making omni wallets that can hold several types of digital currencies that you can then put into an exchange and go out into another experience, as if you were going out of the dollar and into the euro, right? So these digital exchanges are allowing new opportunities in getting new listeners, getting new fans, but also in developing new promotions and affinity programs. And affinity programs, of course, take a long time for corporations to put together. Imagine if you could do that on the fly, instantaneously, out of Lady Gaga into Ford Focus, for instance.
At no cost.
At no
Completely
cost,
free,
frictionlessly.
yeah.
So now you've changed the game, you've changed what engagement looks like, you've allowed people to take that engagement into their own hands and create the cross-references that they need to make it a really personalized experience. And that's one of the actual, real benefits that I see down the line. So Tatiana coin could be valued higher than a Lady Gaga coin. Actually, and all of a sudden, her stock would rise. And she can charge more for gigs. And a whole host of opportunities open up for smaller artists to play in a much larger field. I think that's really important to say. That's part of Ribbon's scheme, and we've been talking about that for a while. So that being said, I want to go back to you, Phil. So do you think that the labels themselves will eventually have to wrap their heads around this, or will this have to happen?
The labels are not going to wrap their head around a theory.
Mhm.
What they will wrap their heads around is anything that will expand their consumer base, because they are a gatekeeper on protecting her rights, okay, as an artist.
Mhm.
So if they can, in the context of protecting an artist's rights, if they can reach more consumers better and faster and cheaper, which is exactly what this is, they're going to be all over it. They already are all over it, because they have to. Their fan base and their transaction base is shrunk so rapidly, so radically. They have to find a way to underpin it, and this is a solution to that. So this is not a tough sell.
It's already an unpredictable business. It's added another layer of uncertainty, I'm sure, to the entire thing.
Radio? Is that what you just said?
A layer of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's not a tough sell.
Right.
They don't care how people consume music. They just want people to consume music. They're not caught up in the currency. It doesn't mean anything to them.
Right. Yeah.
They already deal in every currency on earth.
And on that level,
this is just another
right,
currency.
On that level, it should be transparent. It should be as transparent as HTML is to a website. I don't care what the programming language is, really. What I care about is what it does, right? So I think that's the point that you're making. We're at that time where we can open this up for Q&A. So let's field any questions anybody has about what's going on here. Please, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie Newman. I have a question for Phil. I'm trying to wrap my arms or my brain around how a label would get involved in alternate currencies, and the only area in which they're involved in any currency transaction is working through third parties who are people who sell music or stream music or have services that other people pay for, or in the direct-to-consumer business, which is basically
So Debbie's saying, I was going to go to this, but I just didn't go there because I thought it would just complicate everything. But Debbie's hitting it on the head, which is the record companies, the music companies, are not in the transaction business. So we don't. This is not something that needs to get sold to record companies. It's irrelevant to them.
It's services.
Yeah.
Is Spotify going to take Bitcoin or take
Yeah,
an alternate
or
currency?
Best Buy or Tower Records.
They are the
or,
retailers
yeah,
today. The digital music
what they're going to
services
care
are
about
the
is that
retailers.
where the rubber meets the road, which is Debbie's point, where the transaction goes down. that's it, they'll be thrilled. If there's a currency that brings more value and more transactions, nothing will make them happier. Okay, but they don't do transactions.
But
So-
what they do is they enable, or they encourage and enable now finally, and some of them have their departments set up just for this, they facilitate the ability for their artists or assigned to the label to sell music, let's say from their website or from their
Right, fan
Bands in
club.
Town Sound or their fan club or whatever, other points of presence online or on mobile, whether it's their apps or whether it's their website or whether it's a third-party site. They enable those sites to be able to sell tickets, to sell music, to bundle stuff with a T-shirt or an extra track or whatever.
And that's the reason that we started talking to artists, not their record companies.
Right.
Because artists are transaction centric.
So where do we go? And yes, we're going to get to merchandising, and I think there's a couple of things we haven't talked about yet, and the reticence of even that community to upset the apple cart, right, that they already have going. But it almost has to happen when you think about it in terms of, yes, it's true that buggy manufacturers, when the car came, said, well, why are you messing up a good thing? What some made the transition to make car chassis.
Yeah, but listen,
You know.
the fact of the matter is that nobody likes change.
Yeah.
I'm sure that when the people who made typewriters probably are not the happiest people in the world today. Because up until
Except IBM.
my kid walked in the garage 2 weeks ago and saw a typewriter and said, "What's that?" So if you're making typewriters or you make tabletop telephones or okay, so life changes. There in 5 years there won't be credit cards. So what?
Right.
Do we care?
Fair enough.
It's not about that, It's about giving the consumer the ability to do what they want, where, when, and how to do it better, faster. That's what this is.
So how is the record industry as a whole going to find the wherewithal to be open-minded enough to listen to what? Because you're
First of all,
famous for a quote.
There
You
is
have a
no more
famous quote.
record industry. First of all, second of all,
Okay.
the music industry
music
is
industry.
is already open to it because
Okay.
it doesn't. All they care. There's nothing to sell. They're open to it. All they care about is being able to break more artists and sell more music. It's already
Right.
done. There's no plan to come up with. There's no strategy to tackle. It's done.
Okay. Yeah, you and I have had this conversation over and over again. I'm just actually trying to position it so that
It's
people
done.
understand
It's
what's going
done.
on.
This is about the consumer.
can-
This is not about the
can-
music
can I
industry.
You had a
Can I
question?
add something to that?
Let's
Okay, cool.
let him.
Okay.
ask
Well, I want to present the scenario that I want your, Phil, Tatiana, sort of respond to it, and that is that setting aside the majors for a second, right? Because I think some of the discussion between, that Phil was responding to, that was sort of referring to the majors, right? So, sort of taking from what Tatiana was suggesting, and I think what Phil was also inferring or saying directly is, you can think of the labels, new labels, as having two functions: curating, right, and then investing to filter out, right? So the curation is a filter, right? So the change in the model is not so much the transaction part of it, but is how do I make the decision on what to invest in, right? So if I can somehow have a relationship as an indie label, a new label, setting aside the majors for a second, right? For my constituents who have bought the artists that I've invested in before, right? And I issue some kind of coin thing, so I have a relationship with those people past the transaction, right? Because it got to them through whatever services are out there, and they did the actual transaction. But there's a secondary back channel, right? Back to the artist and back to the label. So the label can then say, all right, now I'm in my label, I got 50 artists. Who do I drop? Right? And then I have three. I have three in the pen.
important piece.
I have three in the
You're talking
pen, which
about
I
the-
like to invest in.
You're
Who
talking
do I
about the
invest
artist
in?
and the label. You're missing the single most important player to both of those people is the fan.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, how do you connect?
But you can't have the conversation without the fan.
Right, but how do you connect to the fan? So the thing with the coin is that there's a
So
secondary.
the fan is holding the
potential.
coin, which is an inextricable value
so the coin
creation.
as a vote,
Right.
right? That they can
Just like the
basically tell
dollar is a
label,
vote.
say,
How do people vote today on the music they like? With the dollars.
Yeah, they buy.
They buy an album, they buy a ticket, they buy a T-shirt.
But that's the music
The
you
more-
see. That's not the
But,
music.
but that's a one-way
what-
transaction too.
Yeah, it's one way, but it's
This
also, it's
becomes
only
a
the
two-way
music that the
transaction.
label is invested in. What I'm talking about is if you've got 5 bands that you'd like to sort of put up there, right? How do you know which one to invest in? Because you can't invest in all 5.
You can invest in the one that responds the best by the fans. Same exact model, it's just a different currency.
Yeah, but you get the vote.
You get the,
question is
just
how do you
like
get the
people vote with dollars, they're gonna vote with
Yeah, but that's
bitcoins.
too late, though.
No, it's not too late. It's even better than dollars.
No, I'm saying if you use the coin, which isn't dollars, which
Yeah.
doesn't cost anything,
Right.
right? Then they can vote with the coins.
Right?
And then after they vote with the coins, then you invest the dollars. All right, so sort of flip the equation back.
Can I say something?
It already exists.
Well, great, great.
Because people
Yeah.
who have, Macklemore has 5 million people that go through the site. You know, Don Ho and the Four Ups at Hawaiians has 500 people. You're going to invest in Macklemore because the footprint's the currency in that story. You can call it whatever you want to call it, but what you're saying is 100% correct, which is there's an indication, and you're saying the indication is this cryptocurrency, which I'm agreeing with you on. Okay, that's sitting at, and what you're doing is, I think what the cryptocurrency does is further empower the music fan to send a message back upstream, which is, I think, the point you're making. Okay, and I'm agreeing with you. Okay, but that's not a tough pill for the music industry to swallow, because it's the pill they've always swallowed, which is you follow the hit. You follow the hit song, you follow the hit artist, you invest where if there's smoke, there's fire. So you follow the smoke with a can of gasoline.
Phil, let me interject for a second. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, Greg, about what that empowerment looks like.
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to touch upon the question here, if I understood it correctly, is how do we change behavior? How do we get the label or the artist to accept a different currency for the transaction and changing how people process that transaction? There's no need to do that if you use it as a reward. You can you basically have 2 transactions. You have the primary transaction, which would be dollar denominated, just like it is today. Nothing has to change. In addition to that transaction, you give the consumer something of value, a reward, an artist coin. It doesn't have to be paid for by the label. It comes from the currency, and then it's labeled by that artist, and then they receive it. 2 separate things that occur. Then that answers your question. That once I receive that reward, I've done my dollar transaction just like I always have. Nothing has to change in my behavior, and this is a problem that Bitcoin faces. That when you make it the reward, you don't have to change your behavior. For Bitcoin to be adopted, you have to change behavior. That's very, very difficult. I receive this reward coin for my transaction I would have done anyways. How I value that then is your feedback. Does that trade at a discount to the underlying currency? Does that trade at a premium? And now you have a very easy way to quantify how are people valuing this artist? And then you can invest your money in the artist that the market is valuing.
He's saying the same thing. I think that all of us are saying, which is this is largely a fan-driven event.
If you were to take dollar currency or currency that we know of for something from an artist, and again, record labels, independent majors, whatever, they don't take money from consumers. They're not in the transaction business. They're retailers, or in some cases, they're artists directly are in the transaction business through third-party platforms that they use to sell products direct to consumers. But if I buy something from an artist and I get some currency as a reward in return, is that currency related to my relationship with that artist? Do I use that currency to get VIP seats? Do I use that currency to get special lyrics? Do I use that currency to get something that I couldn't get otherwise from the artist that develops a relationship as opposed to money?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. All of the above plus. All of the above plus the ability through later exchanges, actually, to go outside of that experience and trade for other experiences with other artists or other products or even cash.
I mean, theoretically, a label could come up with a way to use a currency as a rewards program for specific artist promotions and identify them as artist specific, so they're going to promote the new U2 album.
Except imagine a multiplicity of coins, all only connected by one hub. which is the exchange. They're all existing out here separately with their nodes and their fans out here, engaging with them. But the fans can go through the artist into the exchange and out to another artist, experience,
Then it
or
loses
product.
value to this, just in my
Oh,
particular
no, it
opinion,
creates
that-
new types, it creates new types of value that we haven't seen before. And this is the point. The point is, it's a new way of thinking. And you have to actually shift, take your experience, and you've got a lot of it, I know, especially in this business, and say, okay, I'm gonna have to bolt on, essentially exchange thinking here. Okay? So you are taking on you're taking on the weight of the affinity marketer.
You're meaning the label?
You as the label, yes. You're taking on a different skill set. Now, you actually have those skill sets around you. You
But
may
they
hire a
don't- They're
Maritz.
used to doing affinity marketing now, they're getting data from every digital media
Exactly,
service
but,
of
and
who's
they're
there,
getting it,
the-
okay, and here's the point. They're getting it in real time, but they're not acting on it in real time.
Some of
They
them are
cannot,
better than others, but yes.
better means 6 months instead of 12 or 18, really.
No, it needs
No,
to
no,
be
some of them can do it in
weeks,
days.
days.
No,
But
How about
those of-
instantaneously? How about seamlessly,
no,
today,
that-
now,
but that's
this second?
what we're talking about. This should make it
Yeah.
better, but it's not like these guys are not in the caveman age.
Okay.
You know, it's not that tough.
But the only differentiation I'm trying to make is that even a day is too long now.
Okay,
Well,
that's
e-
good.
And-
even
and-
then, all those affinity programs are not fungible. They're isolated from each
They're
other.
isolated.
I can't transfer from one to another. So think about it as analogy of a dollar bill signed by an artist. It has the signature of the artist, which has scarcity. It also has underlying dollar value. I can trade that as a dollar. If I have one signed by Tatiana, one signed by Jay-Z, they're interchangeable as dollars, but they're unique as artist rewards.
Right,
That's
so
what we're
we have-
building.
He's been very patient. We have a question over here.
Hi, my name is David Orban, and thank you, Tatiana, for inviting me here. I come from the technology side of the business rather than the content side of the business. But it is very interesting to see that it still appears that the content side of the business believes that there is time. That there's time to adapt, time to absorb, time to implement things. But this is evolving just too fast. There is no time. A few years ago, the content industry has been able to stop temporarily technological change by going to the Supreme Court and winning and criminalizing peer-to-peer technologies. But they are coming back with a vengeance. So what you have to, I think, understand is that technology is really very powerful in democratizing. So what David Bowie did a few years ago, securitizing his creation, is now available to everybody. And they are going to leverage it, and they are going to be enormously empowered by it. So I don't know how many of you visited lately the homepage of either the Pirate Bay or BitTorrent.com, and the first is labeled as a criminal enterprise just because of their use of technology, and the second is not labeled as such, but they are doing the same thing. They are using voting to promote on their extremely powerful homepage artists that get the boost of that promotion. Tim Ferriss, for example, 3 times New York Times bestselling author, released his latest book for free on the homepage of BitTorrent.com with an enormous amount of extra content. So now, imagine that, which is a peer-to-peer technology, meeting and coupling with cryptocurrencies, with Bitcoin, which are also peer-to-peer
Yeah,
technology.
and with
It
the
is
passion
bound
of the
to happen.
content itself.
It
Right.
is bound to happen, and the boost that is going to receive, and the marketing value, the visibility value, the financial power that is going to unleash is going to be really, really.
Well, Reddit
great.
did the same thing with Redcoin, right? Reddit took their up-down votes and essentially tried to monetize them, or tried to currencize them, if you will. We'll see how that turns out. I think the jury's still out on that. But conceptually, you're right. I would say, though, that while Bowie and James Brown securitized their publishing and their assets, the IPO, we try to stay away from that, sort of that phrase in particular in the coin industry, because it has SEC ramifications, and just it hints
It's
at
up
a
to
certain
the
thing.
SEC to speed up their game.
Right, but they
I think we should
they don't speed
expect
up their
that they
game.
will be
So we
coming
actually
out
live more in the
very
world
soon,
of, as Debbie was saying, actually more. What are experiences? What are other ways that you can get paid out with this? And what is the nature of owning a share in something? I think that when you have these kind of private currencies, you have to reevaluate a lot of answers that you used to have. The question is, what is securitization now? What does a share mean? If you own a part of something, what does ownership then mean? And speaking of ownership, we haven't even talked about what the blockchain can do for digital rights. We haven't even touched on it. And I think that's a really important subject. That indelible ledger, for all of you who are not aware, the blockchain is an indelible ledger of transactions that the coin produces once it's awarded or transacted. Period. You can't go back and change it once it's accepted. Okay? So we get from that, we call trustless contracts, meaning I don't have to trust you to make a contract with you. I don't even need a lawyer. If I write what the rules are into the blockchain, I don't even need a lawyer. Sorry, Rena. But
But we do need Rena.
we do need Rena. So these
In
are,
order for the contract, there has to be a meeting of the minds, or a willing buyer, willing seller.
well, there has to be a buy-sell. There has to be a buy-sell, absolutely. There has to be a transaction taking place. And so, but you don't have to know that person. You do have to know, and that person has to prove that it exists, and then it has to get delivered, and then boom, it's exercised, right?
I'm
Please.
interested in your concept of the market exchange.
Mhm.
Taking Tatiana coin, for example, and being able to use that exchange to purchase from another Ariana coin,
Mhm.
for example. So do you envision a market exchange where it's a fixed exchange rate, where $1 of the Tatiana coin is worth $1 of Rihanna
No,
coin,
no.
or a floating
No,
exchange?
no.
A floating exchange in which then the value of a Tatiana coin will fluctuate based on market demand.
That's right. And just like between Bitcoin or the euro and the dollar now, it fluctuates on a daily basis and algorithmically sets itself.
Well, there's two components of the value. There's the component that is Tatiana, and there's the component of the underlying unit of currency that allows it to be a currency or a reward. So in some cases, that underlying currency is an infinitesimal amount, which is the reason why it's difficult for some of these coins to hold value. In other cases, it could be a very a larger amount of value, and therefore it can retain value on an exchange like that.
Right, and so that is on its way, by the way. This is not pie in the sky. This is people in this room, including myself, actively moving in that direction. We have a question over here, though, from Brian, I believe.
Yeah, well, we were sort of talking about data, but where you're going, I think is much more interesting, and I'm surprised. Isn't potentially the blockchain, the Bitcoin as a protocol, much more valuable to your industry, and I'm not in the music space,
Yes.
than using it as a cryptocurrency?
You mean the data coming out of the blockchain
Yeah.
Well,
is priceless?
The protocol,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Because
the
what you said really resonated with me at the beginning, which
protocol
is
much more important. The asset
minimize.
doesn't matter. To answer your question, it can be Tatiana coin, it can be Ribbit credits, it can be anything. It's the blockchain technology and the concepts that infers, and that also creates by definition, that are the most critical parts of this ecosystem.
right. I mean, but
Most valuable to it.
Yeah,
ultimately.
It
Oh, yeah.
It allows people to exchange assets very efficiently in a trustless way. And Bitcoin, the primary use is as a currency, but you're right. Why does it have to be currency? It doesn't. It can be any
It
digital
can be
asset.
any asset.
Any digital asset can be populated in that ledger.
Right, because I think that's what you said in the beginning was the most important of this is to take out as much friction between the consumer and what they want to
Just
get.
make it the shortest line you can make it.
Yeah, the music, right?
So make the music the currency itself.
And
Maybe.
bingo, there it
That's-
is.
But if your problem is fraud and piracy, and you want to have a direct relationship with the consumer, don't you leverage the protocol?
The
to
blockchain, you
exchange
leverage the
music, and then they
blockchain to
can-
create,
Right.
okay, so let me answer you.
The blockchain will help eliminate the
that's,
piracy.
that's easily
The
to solve. You just
blockchain-
register addresses.
Yeah,
you know,
which
you know who
you
owns
probably
it.
have an inkling of, though, is the heart of it when it comes to ownership and rights management is the one spend policy or anti-two spend policy, which is once it's in that ledger, you can't use the same coin for the same thing at that time twice. It's impossible to do out mathematically, right? So I can say, okay, well, what's your definition of spending? My definition of spending in my blockchain is downloading a song onto his phone. That's it. That's as far as it goes. Or I can say, oh, you can spend it twice, and my blockchain will do that. And he can then give it to somebody else. or 3 times. And you've opened now tiers of transactions that did not exist before, or that took too much time and too much friction to exist, so that micro value can be transmitted instead of having to work in the pennies and the dollars of credit cards or whatever. Yes.
Well, you guys are hinting on it right now. That's what I was going to suggest. But just a comment. I actually, from a personal view, I don't think piracy is a problem. I think it's the greatest thing to happen to content because I'm anti-copyright and even anti-intellectual property. But what you just hinted on, not that I want to help to stop piracy, but what about the idea, instead of having a coin for the artist, the song itself is the coin? And like you guys mentioned, as the idea where you release a song and just like there's only a limited number of Bitcoins, you release 100 million copies of a song. The artist retains, say, 50, 40%, whatever they choose. They start selling the rest. The first ones get sold kind of cheap to go to the radio stations. The radio stations can buy up 1,000 songs. As the song gets popular, people want to buy it. The song itself becomes the exchange. This way, the artist will profit from the song based on how many he retained. Once they sell all their own songs, that's it. They're in the open market. You don't get this perpetual, like, oh, I made one hit song and now I'm a billionaire for life because I get to sue everybody.
Okay, so what you just said, the gentleman who stood up against the wall a minute ago said, "I didn't." That's you. And everybody's saying the same thing, but it's all the engine behind all of this is the fan. Because this is like how they were going to control the internet until the consumer took over the internet. Remember at the beginning of the internet, they were going to put these regulations, restrictions, and who's going to be the agency that the whole thing was like, see you later, because there's no regulation. It's to your point. It made it and to his language, it democratized the fan became the reader became the curator. Okay. The reader became the editor. It flipped the model upside down. It's exactly what we're talking about. And we're all saying the exact same thing.
This is the important part of this panel being who they are and being hand-selected for this conversation, because Phil, what you just said is music as currency, as branded currency. And Phil made basically that case with different technology and a different, just a little bit before this, which allowed us to be able to think in the way that you just thought just a second, in a decentralized manner, as opposed to a federated or centralized manner.
But it's about shifting the
Always
power
about that.
to the fans.
Right.
That's the core of the concept, is being able to put the power in the hands of the fan instead of the bureaucracy.
Tatiana, do you want to comment?
Or, I mean, the artist, I am kind of, a little on the side. I always said, okay, if somebody was going to pirate my music and get it for free, but they hear my music, versus never pay me a dime for it and never hear, or you know what I mean? Like, I would rather more people listen to my music. But now I have the ability to make that decision, because now I have that direct relationship. If I want to reward my fans and say, hey, take my whole album, give it to everybody you want because you already gave me enough and I already made enough in my mind. I made enough to cover the recording. I can eat for the next couple months. Have fun, because to me that's important. And another artist might say, no, I want you to pay this much money. I mean, it makes it so it's really up to the artist and their team and their fans to kind of do that. And then there's no government involving itself in the middle of it and saying, you can't do this. I mean, when the, the recording industry, RIA, whatever, they're going up and they're saying, oh, well, we want to fight for copyright and we want to protect this. They're not speaking for everybody. There's a lot of people that don't feel the same way. And that's a problem. So I think that that this maybe solves that a little bit.
James, you had a question?
Yeah, it's sort of trying to connect the point, but first of all, I want to say how elated I am, because last time I came to an event which was specifically about Bitcoins and currency, I was chastised to say that I thought Bitcoins were more of an elitist thing because you couldn't get it. You only get fractions and fractions and fractions of
The
it.
trillionaires are already made, yes.
Okay, so, but to me it was more like a stock. Okay, so essentially I needed a certain amount to get a Bitcoin, and it was, price of a stock. So I didn't really see it as real currency. And what I'm seeing here now is that we're starting to use now this cryptocurrency as a variable and saying, okay, it can be music and whatever, but understand what actually made the whole internet what it is open source. okay? A lot of these digital currencies are now open, so that means that anybody can come, copy, reproduce, and so on and so forth. I think that's a little bit against what digital rights management is trying to achieve, so I don't quite get yet how you mean it's one and the same. If you make
There's
music the
a
currency.
middle meeting point that's a natural part of this. But yeah, I mean, in general, you're right.
Right, but here's the other key thing of the internet that makes it valuable. It's layered. So which means that, you know, in economics there's a concept called economic rent, which means that, you know, what you would pay above and beyond what you would usually pay for something if it weren't, you know, as important or popular. So I think that's where it comes back to branding and so forth. So Tatiana coin, its real value as compared to the underlying crypto thing that makes it possible is really what's going to set.
It's your brand equity that allows you
That's right.
to differentiate your price point.
That's right. So
Yes.
so it's not so much, okay, well, you know, I'm against peer-to-peer or something, but we just got to understand that there can be a gray line between everything, and in order for you to maintain value, because the whole idea is exchange, and you exchange value based on what's valuable to you. So democratizing it all, it really just means now that, okay, well, you know, how do I deter somebody, okay, from tarnishing that brand, that label, and so on and so forth?
That's interesting because in the stock market scenario that you're pointing at, you know, you have to act almost like a public company, and you have to keep your story fresh every quarter, which is what every public company does. They have a statement. They come out and they dress up the bride. That's what it's called. You know, don't care what happened. Hey, we had a good day yesterday, and we're going to make that reflect on every single day that happened this quarter. You know, so that's a continual, again, evolution of thought and melding of the decentralized nature of all of this with practical business, you know, practices. You know,
So the FCC only
you have
gets
to have.
involved when that exchange is monetary in nature. So you could print stocks or whatever you have to do. Of course, they remove.
We will not be printing stocks. You did not say that. That's coming out of the video.
Right, but you know, as far as the exchanges are concerned and so forth, the only time that will even hit SEC radar, and you could see they don't even want to pass law, which is the crowdfunding. It's really their whole notion of protection, right? That's really what's going to arise each and every day. Is that, you know,
Ownership and rights management is the crux of all of this. There's no
and so
question
you
about
got to
it.
maintain that, and it essentially helps you maintain value, your brand, you know, recognition, identity, and so on and so forth. So I think the internet was built for that. As long as you maintain it and not really, you know, meld or you put them all in a basket.
Absolutely. Sandy, you had something?
Yeah, I'm more of a financial guy than a tech guy or an artist. And I'm trying, what I still don't understand is when X person buys a currency, the currency, you know, fluctuates big time, as I know it. I don't know that much about it, but that's what I
pretty
hear
accurate
in the media. So how do I, as a purchaser of Bitcoin or whatever digital currency, what should I be concerned about? Am I buying it too high, too low? And
sure, you should, because it's
Yeah, so
unprecedented.
but
there is
how
no
do you-
precedent to
But
this
you're
market.
thinking about it like a stock. What you want to make
Yeah.
sure the value
So
you
how
want
do
it-
you?
Here's
how,
the value you want it to have. Not
Okay.
that it's high or it's low. You want it to be able to you want to be able to use it to acquire the thing that you want to use to transact it for.
No, I
That's all
understand.
it's got to be.
But
That's
I
all it's got to be to
understand
you.
that, But your investment in this currency or Bitcoin is like.
I've often thought
You know what I'm
that
saying? I really don't understand
to-
it.
to
because
Brian's point-
me,
Well,
okay,
let me help
let
you.
me just say one
Okay.
thing. Me, as a studio, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
not me, but Premier Studios, receives the money in U.S. dollars, okay?
Through BitPay.
Through BitPay.
Tony owes me another $1,000.
Okay, but.
What about me?
But what about the person who's buying Bitcoin for their wallet, as I understand it? I'm not too familiar with it.
To hold.
To hold, yeah. I mean, how do they know?
They
I
don't.
mean, they're like traders, really.
Yeah.
Do you
Is
think?
that
Do you
right?
think?
But-
Do you think about that when you put dollars in your wallet?
Sure you do.
Absolutely.
If the currency's going to go up or down?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing.
But here's
Same
what
thing.
Just
Yeah.
more volatile.
I just don't understand that. I just don't understand who should really be concerned
Right now,
about
Bitcoin's in a pump-up phase. You have to consider that what people are really investing in is what Brian talked about earlier, the ability to turn the underlying technology into something really game-changing, and where Bitcoin finds its true value. Now, as a currency, I've always been under the impression that Bitcoin's a market entry brand.
Okay.
What it does is it teaches us that whether it, and I'm sort of a heretic and I get a lot of pushback from this in my own industry, but whether Bitcoin were to live or die next month hardly matters. It matters to people who hold a lot of Bitcoin. What the proposition that's been put forth is that digital currencies can work because, like Adam Smith said in the late 1700s, money is a belief system. And that's what this is proving. In a system that is global, decentralized, and immediate in action, if you can tap into a belief system like the passion of music, then you actually have a currency that people will use.
What would make this digital currency, Bitcoin, whatever it is, calm down? In other words, calm down in fluctuation. What
Everyone
would
on
it take?
Earth dying at the same time. I have no idea.
It's just the demand. For the first time probably ever in human history now, we have free market competition in the money industry, and money is now an economic good, just like televisions.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before there was one brand we could buy, and that made it very stable. Maybe that was good for some reasons because everybody had to demand that one good. Now we have Bitcoin was the first option beyond government money, and now there's all these other ones coming out that have unique utility. It's a free market, so why do you buy a television? Well, you want big or small, you want expensive, cheap, this brand, that brand. So many variables go into the value, and I think Bitcoin definitely plays a niche in that industry, but there are so many other needs that can be met that Bitcoin can't meet. So to think that it will be dominated by Bitcoin in the future, I think that would make me sad, because we want competition to create innovation and give us greater, better products that meet our utility demands.
Can we, let's get, anybody, let's have, can we have someone who hasn't asked a question? Is there anyone who, yeah?
Just a small question. You said my blockchain. What did you mean? It's Bitcoin's blockchain or your company's blockchain?
There are a multiplicity of blockchains. What's the context? What was I saying?
The branded coin.
Oh, me? Yeah, we have our own blockchain. Yeah, we're building our own blockchain.
I actually think that any branded coin ought to have its own blockchain.
I think there's a lot of risks to be based on the Bitcoin blockchain, specifically what I could have mentioned.
Well, bloat being the first one.
It's decentralized. Yeah.
Actually, this was like a question that I wanted to ask. You're always talking about the disadvantages of blockchain, but people trust the blockchain, and creating a new blockchain of your own. I want to understand, like, how do you see it?
It must only, in my mind, and believe me, I'm the mind of a marketer who's worked in technology for brands for many years, right? So my first love would be the marketing side, but I learned the technology from everything through early websites through to this, from 1993 on. Now, what you're suggesting, when you say that Bitcoin has the brand awareness, people trust the brand, right? And you're saying they trust the blockchain. Most people who hear Bitcoin don't even know what a blockchain is. They don't trust the blockchain, they trust the brand. Okay, that's the first thing. We, as nerds, trust the blockchain. And no, honestly, we trust the blockchain, and I don't even truly trust the blockchain, but I know mathematically I can trust the blockchain, and I know how it works, and I know how the acceptance works, and so I understand that. That's transparent to the users that we're talking about.
You also know it's more trustworthy than any that's come before it.
More trustworthy, yes, more trustworthy
Which is an
than
important
ever come
piece.
before it, and that is an important piece. But whether it's that blockchain or any blockchain, the blockchains that we're talking about here, in a branded corporate sense, are going to be very centralized, if not federated, if not centralized, right?
Of course.
So
That wasn't my question. I really wanted to
Repeat your
why do you think there is a need for another blockchain?
So many reasons why.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
It's not
I
the
think
final
there's a lot of
solution.
reasons why.
Think of any free market. Like my phone is a Samsung Note 3. 2 years ago, it didn't exist. 2 years ago, there was another phone that was the best phone on the market, but now this phone is better. Bitcoin is a product that we consume. It's interesting. It was revolutionary. I own it. I love it. It's changed my life. But if we can't create something better, there's no point, right? There's no progress. Bitcoin, there are things about Bitcoin we can't change because nobody is in controlling it. And
limitations to the code itself.
There's limitations to the code. There's some things you just can't change in the Bitcoin code, like rewarding people, instead of giving coins to miners, giving coins to people who participate in transactions. You can never get that change in the Bitcoin code, forget it, right? So Bitcoin isn't going to die, but we can create other blockchains that have other utility functions that can provide other consumer needs, and they coexist.
Yeah, which is why the whole sidechain argument even started in the first place. Yeah, James?
Yeah, I just want to make a key point to this question and what the gentleman there was saying about fluctuations. Again, it's helpful to make that parallel to the actual economy, all right? Because really the answer to the question, and it's not anything to be smart or whatever, but is the purpose to credit rating agencies, okay, in terms of stabilizing, currencies. For example, the dollar, in the United States is very important because they feel that the United States credit rate. So you get AAA ratings, a big thing, and it stabilizes currency exchange.
I guess we used to have one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But so it's the same question. So what would mitigate whether or not someone creates a new currency or uses another, blockchain is in terms of that trust that, you could put the brand, you could say the dollar is the brand, but really it's who's looking over it and who's rating it in terms of, okay, well, this is credible. And if you go to it, so it brings the question of the exchange. The exchange don't care about the brand.
Right.
Okay.
It cares about, it's only quantifiable.
Right.
So what he's saying is that like any currency, it's the full faith and credit of the issuing party. We are not, the US dollar has no bearing in fact, really. It's the full faith and credit that we be able to, number one, pay down on our debt, number two, have some reasonable growth in GDP, and some other things, that we do cool stuff. We surf. Whatever you believe in about America buoys the dollar or the euro or the yapstone or whatever it happens to be, right?
I think I wanted to say a quick note about that. One of the things that I really liked about Tatiana Coin starting out was its application to so many different types of products, right? And when you have somebody that goes to work, right? They go to work, and what do? They mess around on Facebook, they call their friends, they take a break, they don't really care, right? Because as long as they can stay under the radar of the boss, they're still gonna get paid. Tatiana Coin and those similar types of things, all of a sudden your whole incentive as an employee, or you're working for yourself. And if you don't deliver, if I say, oh, thanks for all the money, guys, I'm going to party with the other people in Ibiza, nobody's going to ever give me any money again, and I'm worthless. But now I have a reason to do better. I have a reason to give you exactly what I wanted to give you in the first place, or what I promised you. And I think that that's just a whole different shift in the mindset of people and their contribution to society. And I think that in itself is just, wow.
You keep saying Ibiza. You've got a thing for Ibiza.
I don't know. I mean, anybody want to go? I need a
I
vacation.
sent my daughter to Ibiza. I'd never do that again.
That's my example.
So, we have one more question, guys. I'm sorry that this has to be the last one, but we do have we have to be out of here. But we have 45 minutes milling about networking after. I can only take one more.
Oh, wait, Adam didn't give one.
Okay,
I feel bad.
You're the last one. Okay, fine.
I just want to comment on why do we need more than one blockchain. Is that Bitcoin is probably not going away. The code's not going to change, but chances are that Bitcoin, at least how I see it, will be the ultimate savings vehicle because of its trust. And then other digital currency might be better at spending it for certain places, certain areas. And as for Bitcoin's free market, I think every time a government comments on a law, the free market is slowly dying in Bitcoin, which is another reason why you get these price fluctuations. But back to a music question. So I see music, and again, I'm not a music person, but I see music in the US as very centralized, as opposed to something like reggae music out of Jamaica or soca music out of Trinidad. I see it as very decentralized. The artist just randomly puts out one song, and it can get popular 2 years later. So what do you think about that kind of a model for music in general?
Interesting question. I mean, if you mean music as currency, then it can simmer the same way. You might have a dormant or sleeper, a dormant hit that can just pick up for some reason. You know, that's a human thing. I don't think it's even a technology or a currency
I don't
thing.
think it's related to the currency. But the truth is, the vast majority of music that's made available in America or anywhere else in the world has nothing to do with music companies.
Has that to do with what?
Has nothing to do with record companies or music companies.
Adam, close us out.
My question's for you. So, I happen to believe that the old economy of the corporate, model is dead, and we're moving to the new economy, which is entrepreneurship. As Tatiana mentioned, we're moving out of paid by the hour and into paid for performance. So, from your perspective, having so many years of experience in these different industries, how do you see digital currency as enabling entrepreneurship?
Exactly the same way people transact their collections. It used to be our parents or our grandparents might have had in every home, every living room, there was a rack of vinyl records, and then we had a rack of CDs and DVDs. My kids don't have a single thing that they own. Everything lives in the cloud. They can access anything they want 24/7. They don't own a single piece of anything. That is the single biggest indicator to me that it's the fan-centric, it's the control of the consumer, which is where it should live, where they decide what they want and how they want it. It's exactly to your point.
Except in Japan.
Except in Japan.
But that's all right.
But that's the single living proof for me. I go to my 30-year-old son's house. There's not a CD or a DVD in sight. Doesn't exist. Not part of their life.
It's all about the consumer. That's where we should end it. Thank you, panel. So we're not closed. You don't have to go home. Get a drink.
I have one more question.
Oh,
No,
ask the
Ted,
question
it's
out there.
How 90% of the population in the world has no idea about Bitcoin or digital currency. Okay, that ideal.
Most of them don't even have a bank account.
That's right, 99.
They have credit cards, everything. Okay, but you don't totally need. Okay, how do you? What's your plan to educate the consumer about digital currency?
Stop talking about Bitcoin. Start attaching it to passions. Their passions: music.
Tatiana
authors,
coin.
Tatiana coin. That's it.
Shameless plug.
Nobody cares about the underlying code of Bitcoin. That's the people who code it care about it. It's how it acts, how it works, and as the consumer back to last thing back to consumer empowerment. No, it's fun.
I've been living like a nun because of my voice.
What?
Thanks, guys.
I have an answer to that I can tell you later on.
We're gonna put on some music, have a drink. What's that?
Hi, this is Rick Willard from On 21, and I'm speaking with Phil Quartararo, who's our anchor panelist tonight for Digital Currency Innovations in Music and Entertainment, the first panel of its kind to address the music industry and its reach into digital currency and blockchain applications. Phil, how'd you like the panel?
I love the panel. I thought it was really inspirational that people are even thinking about this. And I'm coming from the world where our number one objective is to put as much music into as many people's hands as physically possible. And what a cryptocurrency does really is open up that market. If you can't cut the pieces of the pie bigger, the only solution is to make the pie bigger. And that's exactly what this does.
Absolutely. You spoke a lot about empowering the consumer. Tell us a little bit about how you feel about that and how that happens through, say, blockchain technology.
In our business, when you're in the talent business, you never know what you got until you got it. And you sign things that you hope people are going to like, that you invest a lot of time and money and resources into finding talent, signing talent, marketing talent, branding and packaging talent. But you don't know until you know, because the ultimate jury is the consumer. So the fate of what we do and all the talent we sign lies in the hands of the consumer and of the fan. So empowering the fan is the single most important thing we can do, because that's the litmus test at the end of the day.
Thanks, Phil. I really appreciate it.
Hi, this is Tatiana Moroz, and I'm with Bitcoin Magazine, and I'm here with my good friend, Amos Mieri, who helped me create Tatiana Coin. He's here with My Powers. Hi, Amos. Welcome to New York.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm really excited.
We're very happy to have you here. So it's so unusual that you happened to come here during this panel where we announced that Premier Studios, which I used to work here, recording the third album here, it's the first studio to accept Bitcoin, and you helped me create the first artist coin. And we were talking about your platform. So tell us a little bit about how we met, and I don't know, I'm doing all the talking. Tell us some stories.
All right, so actually because you're a part of it, we were really, really overwhelmed from the first artist coin, Tatiana Coin, where actually like more than 5% of your followers on Twitter really wanted to be part of it and have a stake in your brand and engage with you in this new way that we offer at My Powers. And actually, as an ex-musician, I totally get it now. It helps the musicians engage with their fans.
Yeah, I didn't even really, you told me about those, the figures before, and I was like, yeah, great. But now I'm getting it. That's really cool. And you know, I think that when I was creating Tatiana Coin with the music industry and with everything I do, you know, you want to make sure that you work with people that you connect with. And I think that you being a musician definitely kind of gave us a start. So I think that that's great. I think it really allows me to interact with my fans. I haven't been using the powers as much as I know you want me to, but we're getting to that point where I'm going to be able to just create more content and share it with people and give them exclusive behind the scenes footage.
Yeah, of course. It's something that is a learning process. I mean, when we started with Tatiana Coin, we didn't really know what we're doing, but the platform it's becoming more, there are more features and more things that you can use actually, and the coin holders are able to use and really engage with you and get all those great things that you want to offer them.
What are the upcoming projects, and do you have any big announcements about the company?
Yeah, so we have some really, really big projects that we cannot really talk about, but some of the projects we do is we're planning to launch Ari Spears, which is a comedian. We're talking with another really, really big comedian and a really big DJ, and with something like maybe 13 million followers, and each one of its videos.
Too many. Now I feel bad that you're sharing the secrets.
No, I won't.
Look for a DJ that has a lot of fans.
No, really, really big DJ. So he's going, for example, to let all his fans get into his shows and create music with them. So it's going to be a really engaging and cool thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what the coins are doing, and My Power has made it really easy for me. I mean, there's a lot of really great platforms out there, but my heart will always be with you guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, I'm here with Greg Simon, Chief Financial Frog of Ribbit.me, which is the world's first cash-back cryptocurrency. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Rick.
You know, Greg was just a panelist on the On 21 Digital Currency Innovations in Music and Entertainment panel. With Greg, I thought you did a fantastic job on the panel tonight. I actually think that your input was key to understanding the future of cryptocurrency in music and entertainment, much as Phil was the lead into where we are now and Tatiana is the present. You added a great dimension into where we're going. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. It's very exciting. The panel was very encouraging to see that there is so much potential to merge the digital media industry with the blockchain technology. And it's very simple what we're doing. We're taking this underlying blockchain technology and we're creating a tool to bring the brand and the consumer much closer together in an efficient and transparent way, and rewarding that consumer for their loyalty to the brand. And so if I purchase something or I'm involved with a brand or an artist in some way, I'm going to get those reward points from them, and it's entirely free for that brand to offer, and it builds my loyalty with that brand and creates a stronger union between the two.
Yeah, and as PhilQ pointed out on the panel, it is all about the consumer, right? It's all about engaging the consumer in a way that creates a synergistic relationship and not a one-way relationship, which is traditionally how it's been going. Okay, so thank you, Greg. I appreciate it, and we'll see you again at the next On 21 conference.
Thank you very much, Rick.